Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin. Oh, today, what a wonderful show we have about a very, very, very troubling topic: tariffs. You've seen them on the news, you read them in you talk about them, you hear about them. Tariffs, it's been threatened for years. They're here, and they are affecting everything we do in business. But before we go into that, what I'd like to do is thank the person who's paying our bills, Ed Flanagan and ERA Group. Hey, listen, everybody, you work very hard to earn your money. And as somebody once told me, it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. And if you're looking to keep those funds in your business, call Ed Flanagan and the ERA Group. They are expert miners of the gold that's hidden in your invoices. So call Ed. He's up there in the audience with you. So back to our topic. Tariffs. You know they're here, they come, they go, they come, they go, and finally they hit. And now there's more threatening of more tariffs. What do we do in a situation like this? Do we tighten our belts? Do we change our menus? Or do we, raise prices? There's only so much the consumer will take. So why don't we, Bob, you're the consumer.
I'm a consumer.
What do you think about what's going on? And even more important, Bob, how does a business plan for the future if they have no foundation to build their future on?
Well, probably the first most defensive thing any business can do is short the stock market just because it changes every day. So, I guess that's a little pessimistic and a little weird, but that seems to be where we are. There's two tough things about this situation. One is there are no plans. Nobody has planned for this. I hate to say this, but just from my observation, there's a large majority of businesses in the restaurant food business that don't really have good plans to begin with, even in good times. So, throwing in some uncertainty about pricing and so forth is terrible. So I think that the answer to everything is plan as much and as well as you can, take advantage of any kinds of futures or options that are available in purchasing. And obviously, at this point, there's two problems. One is how you're buying supplies, and the other one is getting customers to come in and spend money. I wish I had more wisdom than that. Other than just pointing out the painfully obvious, but I think some sort of planning is is really the key.
Okay,
And as I said,
before we
a
go any
thing that's
further, Bob,
what's
tell
that?
everybody who you are.
Oh, okay. Bob Heiss. I am a sales consultant. We help companies build world-class sales organizations, sometimes sales training, a lot of consulting. We work with a lot of smaller and startup type businesses to help them become sustainable and scalable.
Okay, Lindsey, tell everybody who you are.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lindsey Vigoda, and I'm the New York Director of Small Business Majority. We research, advocate, and educate small business owners on the state, local, and federal level. Happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you. Julio, say hello.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Julio Garcia. I'm the director for a couple of produce companies, primarily GMC Imports, NYC Tropical House. We also have a new startup called Royal Fresh Corp. We'll be launching in April.
Thank you.
Timing, Julio. Great timing.
Fred, say hello.
Good morning. I'm Fred Clashman, editor and publisher of Total Food Service, and I have a question for Lindsey and for Julio. From my vantage point, a lot of this thing is going to be guided by the distributors that our restaurants and food service operators buy from. So what's the attitude amongst the distributor market in terms of what the options are to move around the tariff challenge? And then does this empower, the other question that goes with it, does this empower domestic manufacturers, producers to price gouge at the same time? What's this marketplace going to look like as we go forward?
Go ahead.
Julio. Lindsey, jump in.
Right now in the produce industry, it's a little too soon to tell. Markets are they're in a tailspin. We're all over the place. There's so much uncertainty, and I think that the uncertainty is really what has us. We don't know whether to buy now or wait. We don't know if the tariffs are going to hit. Is it going to be just Mexico and Canada, or they're even talking about reciprocal tariffs in Central and South America. which is also pretty dangerous. But you couple that with the immigration policy. So Fred, part of Fred's question was, do you think that American producers don't have anybody to work on the fields? I was in Vineland, New Jersey yesterday, and they're preparing now for the blueberry season, and they're probably at about 20% of the workforce. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty. The markets are in tailspin. We were just going to wait it out. To answer the original question of the whole session, what people have done in our experience, what's happening right now is everybody's going up on their prices as far as restaurants, food service. Everybody that's not contracted in is just jacking up the prices.
Yeah, I would second everything Julio said. It's chaos. And even if these tariffs go away, which who knows at this point, there's a already chilling effect. People are already raising their prices. People are preparing and bunkering down for this. We have a man in our network, we have a manufacturer, Denver Vibrator Company, and she's a small business owner, and she has no idea how to figure out how to cover 25% increases in her costs. So she started buying more, but she can't quite figure out when, where, how. And so she's going to have to raise prices. Same, we've talked to ice cream shop owners, we've talked to restaurant owners who are scared that they're going to have to start charging, way more for a scoop of ice cream. And what does that do to the consumer? And what does that do to our small businesses? If larger businesses can absorb those costs because they run on larger margins, then it really does strain across the board, whether you're talking about smaller manufacturers, whether you were talking about smaller restaurants, it strains it. And if COVID was our last really big event, tariffs are really going to hit small businesses tenfold. And we're already seeing it, regardless if these tariffs go through, whether they're paused, whether they continue on, there is already an effect that's happening in the market.
Yeah. It's sort of like the hyena of the business world.
Yeah.
Anybody that's weak is going to be eaten,
Yes.
and it's a sad thing. Bob, I know you work with a few restaurants, especially one in White Plains. What are they saying?
They're saying exactly the same thing that Lindsey and Julio were saying. They are also talking about substitutes for various ingredients, less expensive substitutes that maintain the integrity of the recipe and the taste. So there's a lot of experimenting going on, and a lot of creative buying in around those ingredients. That's
Okay.
what I'm hearing.
Okay. So as a question, we have the three choices. What does a restaurant do? What does a restaurant or any business do? I mean, we've diagrammed the problem. How do you cope with it? It's great. Restaurant can't sit back and see what's going on. They have people walking in the door today. How do they work with this? What do you see with this, Julio? Are they buying, or are they buying short? What are they buying?
There's that joke about the guy who goes to the doctor and he's really sick and he says, "How long do I have?" And he says, "Don't buy green bananas."
Okay.
That's what's happening right now. Is people are buying, restaurants are buying what they need for today, and maybe what they need for tomorrow. And if they sell out, they're just gonna tell their customers, "I'm sorry, we sold out." They're not planning the way it used to. We sell about 12 or 14 Italian restaurants in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and they're all changing their schedules. Wednesdays, now they're closing. They used to just close on Mondays. Now they're closing Mondays and Wednesdays. They went up on their price of pizza. Pizza is now a gourmet item, I guess, and it's not a pretty thing. I would love to say that everybody's going to go back to the supermarket. Like, I think, Larry, you mentioned how the Chico's has that cafe up by us in New Jersey. We have Uncle Giuseppe's with a lot of prepared food. I think that's the way it's going to be for a little while. I think people who are used to going to restaurants maybe are going to go to those supermarkets and buy the prepared food instead and bring it home, instead of just going to your traditional sit down, whatever, weekly or bi-weekly dinner.
Yeah, it's as a consumer, I see we don't step down, we step back from what we were ordering before, which is going to hurt the restaurants also. So we don't order the appetizer, we don't order an extra drink. We cut back there. So how does a restaurant survive that even if they fill the tables, the checks seem to be higher. They're really smaller at the far end. So how do they deal with something like that? Bob?
Well, I guess the question, the hidden question in that is what happens to the margins? Do restaurants try to maintain the same margin that they have and raise the prices, or do they raise the prices and let the margins deteriorate? And the long-term consequences of that, of course, are well, look, if you look at regular non-restaurant, non-food businesses, when there's a price crisis like this, prices go up quickly and come down slowly. Sometimes they never come down because people keep the prices high so they can recover the margins they lost during the crisis. I don't know, we don't know how long this crisis will last, but I guess the real question is, will the food businesses let those prices come down? Because if they don't, there's going to be a more permanent hit to people coming to restaurants and spending money and doing what you're saying, Larry, just buying less and buying more pizza instead of expensive lobster ravioli.
Yeah,
I think
and
I,
good.
I think all of you are underestimating the entrepreneurial spirit and abilities of the restaurant community. These businesses are not food manufacturing businesses. These are not packages that have labels with prices on them. These are creative people that provide a dining experience. And within that dining experience, X amount of the money is attributed to the actual food cost itself, and X amount is attributed to the experience. And so I think we're missing sort of the point of the communities that these restaurants serve.
Yeah, I think also what you've got is a situation where we have an ever changing variety of foods being offered to people so that, 10 years ago, who ever heard of a ramen shop? Seriously, it just didn't exist. But now they're all over the place. They're all over the place. Why? Because it's an inexpensive product that can be sold reasonably and taste good. And people try it, and they'll try something like that. Ed, unmute yourself for a second, Ed.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Ed.
Yeah.
So you deal with restaurants, restaurant chains, and food businesses all the time. Where do you see where do you see their best choices on how they save money?
The thing with food service costs, Larry, it's very difficult to control costs because chicken breasts are going up and down every day. Crab meat going up and down. So what we're able to do is put in a cost plus situation where we where we go out to bid and ask the broadline suppliers to come up with a cost plus situation that they agree to lock in a price for our clients based on their costs plus a markup. And that markup has to cover their overhead, their freight, and their margin. So during that 3-year period, we do audits to make sure that they're actually following and adhering to that contract. But the thing is, they can say their cost is anything, right? So how do you make sure? We actually do audits. And we ask them to give us their price that they paid for the crab meat from their supplier. Then we apply the markup and make sure it's accurate. And once they know we're looking, they don't fool around.
Yeah. So the days of eyeing something, or this is the way my father did it, or my grandfather did it, seem to be over. Peter Herrera, who's over here, says if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so, the idea of, a handful of this and a handful of this that your grandma once did is no longer the case. And as Ed said, Ed is, by the way, from ERA Group, everything must be measured, everything must be accounted for. And so, Bob, back to you. How are you getting restaurants to change their ways to be able to manage their business in today's climate?
Well, my perspective on that is the costs, the cost of purchasing food, the cost of the overhead for the restaurant, which includes the cost of the variable cost of purchasing food. It kind of is what it is, and people are going to have to make the adjustments that they can, whether it's substituting ingredients, buying smarter, buying futures, doing cost plus things that Ed is talking about. I think the people I'm speaking with are concentrating a lot on marketing. how to keep their customers coming, how to get new customers to come in. They're doing that with menu changes, with entertainment, with music and things like that. So if just relying on your old customers to keep coming is not, I don't think, very wise, because the ones that do come are gonna spend less. And a lot of people are, instead of coming twice a week, twice a month, 3 times a month, they're gonna cut that in half. So it's unless you get new customers to come in and spend money, it's gonna be really dangerous.
So what you're saying is they're selling the experience, not only the food.
Different, yeah, exactly.
All right. Fred, what are you seeing in the market, we've discussed this before in past VBSs. What are you seeing in the market with people selling experience?
I think we just came out of dry January and came out of a real growth in mocktails and quality mocktails. So I think there's a new focus on what's going on behind the bar and the creativity of those bartenders and that bar staff to add to that experience and create something that you can't get anywhere else.
Yep.
A lot of that.
Yeah, it's the experience. I mean, what's the difference between getting vodka on the rocks or a martini in a glass,
Yep.
in a martini glass? I'll tell you what it is. It's $3. $3 for pouring that vodka in over ice, giving it 6 shakes, and pouring it into that fancy glass is $3. So it all boils down, in my eyes, if you're serving the same quality product, to your wait staff. If the person is an order taker, you're going to lose. If the person is a waiter, like all us gray hairs, no waiters, that actually sold product, you're going to win. So, Lindsey, how are you seeing the small to medium-sized business add education to the mix so that you can get somebody to take that on the rocks to putting it in a martini glass?
Yeah, you see, something I always tell business owners is stay curious. If your business model is stale, and this is with or without tariffs, if there's troubles ahead, if it's stale, stay curious. Go look around, shop at your competitors and see. So for restaurants, especially if you're tend to be in rural areas, go to an urban area and see what it looks like. See, oh, this bar has lots of plants. Maybe I want to replicate that. This bar has an amazing martini experience or even a bourbon flight. So, and we know alcohol drives up price for and extends restaurants' margins. And so stay curious. I would also argue that is a good piece of advice for tariffs itself. Going back to what y'all were saying about manufacturers, see how much that they're, paying for their products. Ask them, ask your landlord what it looks like to renegotiate your lease. I think we have to be innovative. And to what Fred was saying, entrepreneurs are naturally innovative. They are the innovators of our world, really. And so to maintain that spirit, you have to be curious. You have to continue to adapt and change. And tariffs are no different. But it also doesn't happen in isolation. We're seeing tariffs at a time where there is record high commercial leasing, where there is mass deportations, where your wait staff, maybe where your back of the house, or even where you're getting produce is not as readily available. You're seeing, taxes go up in some areas and go down. So these tariffs aren't happening in a bubble, and business owners are feeling the impact of all of it. So be curious. However, understand you're not alone. I think we do an opinion poll at Small Business Majority every quarter. And this last quarter, we saw a sharp decline in what people were feeling about being optimistic about their own businesses, a sharp decline of their own perspective of their own business moving forward, which is not a great sense when it comes to business owners, nor is it surprising.
My mind is spinning right now. And I'm going to go back to something that Fred said, and let's really nut down on this. Number one, you can't control food prices. Can't. They're going to go up. You have a choice of buying it or not. You can't control the increase in labor costs. Every time they send someone back to their country, there's one less person that can be bought at a cheap rate, I hate to say it, but it's a cheap rate. Your rent goes up, your electricity goes up, but creativity has no price tag, has no price tag. You control the price tag. Julio, I'm going back in that Rolodex in my head of something you said a year ago on this. Potatoes are expensive, or they're really not expensive compared to everything else, but compared to what they were 2 years ago, yes, they are. French fries are a staple in every restaurant. French fries come with almost everything. Julio, you once mentioned a substitute for French fries that is much less expensive and actually tastes better.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of tropical produce, obviously born into it. And cassava, yuca to a lot of people is an item that, yuca fries are delicious. They're a whole lot cheaper to produce. There's an entire continent that eats it every day. It's called Africa, and it's very sustainable, easily grown. We can grow it in Florida. We used to back in the day grow it in Florida. So yeah, I'm a proponent of that. And I just want to get back to the idea of creativity. I think that the food industry, specifically the restaurant industry, for years now has been asked to pivot and to continue to pivot. And if you know anything about pivoting, you're going to pivot enough that you're back in the same, you're in the same spot. So you can get creative, but you also have to be realistic. I don't think Le Bernardin or 11 Madison Park is worried about, people coming and sitting down. I think it's more of the middle of the road, the blue collar neighborhood, the lower income place. Those are the places I think that suffer first. It's almost, instead of a trickle down, a trickle up. The 1%, 5%, of the restaurants in Manhattan, they're safe. They'll always be safe. There's always going to be a 3-month wait, right, at Le Bernardin. It's those middle of the road guys, and those are another thing about the food industry, real quick. It really isn't restaurant driven as much as we'd like to think it is. It's really food service is about hospitals, jails, schools. So the food industry on a whole is in peril because of maybe wiping out the Department of Education, which is a huge chunk of, people not being able to go on cruises. Feeding the cruise lines is a huge part of the produce industry and the food industry. Those things will also affect the restaurant, because if we lose the schools, let's say I lose a school system that I do in Brooklyn, I'm going to have to raise my prices for the rest of my customers. It's just the only thing I can do.
So that kind of implies that it doesn't imply, I mean, it's quite obvious that there is, like COVID, there's going to be a shakeout of food suppliers. There's going to be a loss, and those that survive have got to be able to take advantage of that. Well, first of all, they have to survive themselves. Second of all, how do you take advantage of the voids created by competitors going out of business? Should be part of I think part of everybody's plan. What happens when 30% of the restaurants in my market either disappear or downgrade so badly that they're not as functional anymore? How do I get that market share? And that's where a lot of planning has to be done. Creativity, marketing, all that stuff. Just a comment, not really a question.
Julio, where is that school food going to go? Where is that product going to go?
Come to my garage, I guess. I don't know. We're just gonna have to cut back on what we buy. Again, another thing you got to understand about the produce industry. I can't speak for the rest of it, but we also have anti-dumping laws. So it's not like, let's say there were a couple of weeks back, there were so many plum tomatoes in Mexico that they sold at the absolute minimum, which is $8.30. It got so bad that the farmers in Mexico were giving the freight, which is about $6,000 per container up to New York. They were giving you the freight for free, which is a little tricky way of getting around the rule. And right now, the price of plum tomatoes has doubled. Next week, it'll triple. And again, because of the anti-dumping laws, all that excess produce, remember COVID in Idaho, when you saw those pictures, those big holes, and they were just dumping potatoes into them? That's going to happen. Let's not forget, we get about 40 to 50% of our frozen French fries from Canada, from places like Prince Edward Island up there, from the British Columbia, all over Canada. It's tons of potatoes up there, and onions. And if you are adding 25% of that, plus 25% fuel, 25% across the board, it's just going to get hairy before. I mean, I'm just hoping that the government steps back and says, hey, let's tax everything except for food. That's a necessity, the way I see it.
Hey, Ed, hold on. Ed, do you have a French fry solution if Cavendish and McCain are taken out of the equation due to the tariff?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask, Fred. I'd have to ask Scott Noir, our food expert.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, like I said earlier on today, time is our enemy. And we're coming close to that time. We have to wrap up. We just scratched the surface here on this topic. And, what I'd like to do is go around the room and everybody just, and Julio, you're going to go last so you have more time to think. I want you to leave the audience with a little tidbit, something that they could think about until the next time we meet. So, Bob, since I know you longest, you're in the hot seat first.
I'm the one with the least food experience in this group.
But you have the business experience,
So
Bob.
yeah, so
Food
relating
industry
it to
is
business, I would say that there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't control. Planning is key, and I know that a lot of regular businesses, again, to your point, Julio, not the top end, but a lot of the smaller businesses just are poor at planning in a good economy, and they're the ones that are going to disappear. And in every crisis, there is opportunities. People in recessions, there's a lot of businesses that make a ton of money coming out of the recession. So figuring out how to be in that group is critical.
Okay. Lindsey.
Mine's a little bit more bleak, but again, none of this is happening in a vacuum. Unemployment rates are going to skyrocket with all these layoffs, mass deportations, healthcare prices, Medicaid cuts, the whole gambit. And so this is just one aspect of where businesses, nevertheless food businesses, are going to get cut and hurt. So I guess the tidbit I would say, if you're a business owner, this is the time to raise your voice and advocate and make sure you're doing everything you can in your capacity and your power to fight back on these tariffs and any of the other issues you care about.
Okay.
That's good, Lindsey.
All right. Julio.
I think that sometimes we forget, and I'm not going to get all patriotic, but this is a resilient country. We are intelligent. We're the richest country in the world by far in the history of the world. And again, I really believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in creativity. I believe in America. That's why my parents left, communist Cuba many, many, many years ago. So this is just another bump in the road. You know what? Advocate, call your congressman, step up, do something about it. And you know what? Before you know it, Larry will be, eating ramen together, and we won't be complaining about how much the cost of that boiled egg on top, right?
I don't think it goes well on rye, though. All right, Fred.
Well, two things. One, I think you're silly if you don't do what Eddie said and call your distributor today and ask about getting involved in a cost plus relationship with distribution. And then I think the second thing is reach out into the community, into places you've never reached before, whether it's church sisterhoods, temple brotherhoods, whatever it is, and offer your restaurant space as a venue for local meetings. And just get involved in that community. And I think with that will come solutions.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Fred. Thank you all. I mean, this has been those of you who've been here before, this has been an experiment, and it's an ongoing process, what we're dealing with. It's not going to be just one show. Ed, you want to say something?
Yeah, Larry, Fred mentioned the thing is to get into a cost plus relationship with the suppliers. Once that occurs, you need the audit. They mentioned that out of 100% of the clients that have audit rights, only 7% actually go through and do the audits.
And it sounds like if we start with French fries, that's the place to start, given that Canadian tariffs are going to impact that.
Yeah.
Yeah, have about $25 French fries side of a side of French fries. It's crazy. And Bob, I'm going to go back to something that you said about planning. Everybody has a business plan. They wrote it in 1942.
Right.
And so, Bob talks plan. It's not plan once, it's plan always. Because as we know, today is a little bit different than yesterday. And if you have the same plan from yesterday, it's not a plan. So just one more thing that I said, we have to be very careful with managing our businesses right now because, the old, what will tomorrow bring? We have no idea, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. So everybody here said, keep your finger on the pocketbook. Spending wildly is out the window. Measuring by the handful is out the window. Measure, audit, and remeasure are the keys. Sound tough? Yeah, it is. But so is closing your business. So here's a couple things, and there's only one thing that I have to say with this current climate. As you know, we are apolitical, so I'm going to keep this in a business sense. All right. What's going on right now with mass cuttings of business people done by businessmen who would never do the same thing with their own businesses. Never, ever, ever would they cut departments. It just doesn't make sense. But we have to live with it. We have to live with it. We have to work with it, and we have to make it work for us. So stay creative, folks. We will be back in 2 weeks. But before we leave, I want to thank Ed and ERA Group. If you have any questions about anything that we said, get in touch with us and we'll put you in touch with the person that it coincides with in this panel, including Ed. And Richard, thank you for coming. Art, thank you for coming. You guys, Richard, I know you had a question. We'll get it next time. Only 2 things left to say, folks. Everybody, even in this climate, stay positive, test negative, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye now.